few years ago, I took the pool out of this space. I do not regret it. I hated that friggin' thing. And I wondered what I'd do with this space. I knew I wanted to make a garden. And eventually what came to me is basically what most people would call a medicine wheel garden. I call it my sacred circle garden. I'm going to give you a little tour. We're going to start in the east direction. So I'm going to just walk into the garden and turn backwards towards the east direction. This is where the sun comes up on summer solstice, right there in that direction. And here's the walkway into the east direction. And here's one of my kitties that I'll speak of in a little bit. So my thought was that I would create this sacred circle garden, and each quadrant of the garden would house medicinal and culinary herbs for the element of that direction. So when you get into medicine wheel stuff, depending on where you live on the planet, the element for the directions vary. I went with the elements that were in a book written by an Eastern First Nations gentleman, and his explanation of why the East Coast, Upper East Coast First Nation people put fire in the east, water in the south, earth in the west, wind, air in the north, and then of course, this is the center of the medicine wheel, the sacred circle, is where ether. His explanation, anyhow, made the most sense to me, which is interesting after, 3 decades of doing air, fire, water, earth in the Celtic tradition. And the air, fire, water, earth, basically air is in the east. So it just turns the medicine wheel backwards, counterclockwise to the north, 1/4 of the wheel, the garden, with the elements. That's all it does. So anyhow, as my medicine wheel garden, sacred circle garden, this was all bare sand because where the pool was. And the first thing to grow in the sand was this beautiful patch of grass that I've allowed to stay. I trim it back so it doesn't go to seed because I don't want grass to take over the whole space. And then this patch of wild daisies that has bloomed here for a few years now and has given birth to so many patches of wild daisies in this garden that I think my sacred circle garden is going to become a sacred daisy garden. So here in the southeast quadrant, I have 2 different types of mints. One is water mint over here, and I picked that up off the Racket River bed and planted it here, not knowing if it would survive in my garden space. I put it down there because it's water mint from the Racket River and it's in the direction of water. I have tarragon over here, many daisies, black-eyed Susans. Last year I planted some wild lupine, and 5 of the 6 plants are coming up. That is also native to northern New York, and I'm very excited about the lupine. I have black-eyed Susans that have also kind of gone rogue all over the garden. Violets that have gone rogue all over the garden, which is all fine. Mama Nature can do what she wants with my garden. I'll monitor it. Then here in the south direction, and the element of water, we move into the southwest quadrant, and we have beautiful lavender, lots of echinacea. And I planted a few echinacea plants my very first summer. And I remember years ago, Crystal Heyman telling me that echinacea in her garden spread like crazy. I loved her beautiful echinacea garden. Well, Crystal's right. I have rogue echinacea plants everywhere, kind of like my rogue. Those are all wild daisies. This is why I'm telling you this is going to be a sacred daisy garden. And that's just some of them. That's just one quadrant of echinacea and daisy. So now we hear Frost say hello. Now we're here in the west direction. Over here in the west direction is my kitty cat Ember. These kitties love this garden, which is the earth element. We have this big chunk of beautiful wood signifying the element of earth, which a tree can signify all the elements. Every plant, everything can signify all the elements. We have sage here. I could go into quite the story about the elements from so many different traditional medicine perspectives. That's another lesson. More daisies, daisies, daisies everywhere. My life is being overtaken by wild daisies. Wild black-eyed Susans and echinacea plants. I have some wormwood here. We're now moving into the north direction. Oregano. I have rogue ferns coming in. And here we are in the north direction. And this is the element of air, wind. And the little walkway that comes down from my house, Frost loves this little garden, and comes to the center. So I'm going to back up here. In the center of my garden, that little mini white pine, it's a hybrid white pine that was mixed with like a Colorado pinyon pine, and it's supposed to only get 20, 30 feet tall, we'll see, is the center, approximate center of the sacred circle. And that's the ether element. You can see that's the ether element there. It's a piece of cedar that I painted with the element symbol for ether. The upper world, the lower world, the middle world. And my 4 pieces of wood that stood at the east, the south, the west, and the north, they all started rotting and getting nasty. So I'm going to paint pieces of cedar like this eventually and put them at each cardinal point when I get around to it. So there's the center. And then I created for myself this beautiful little fire pit that you can see the daisies have taken over. Last year it was black-eyed Susans had taken over, so I can't have an actual fire in it anymore. So when I do ritual ceremonies, I use candles so I don't damage my beautiful flowers. And after 56 years on this planet, and all 56 years I've had cats in my life, I don't know how I didn't figure that the cats would take over my sandy fire pit as their litter box. So I have to navigate around cat nasty. That was a learning curve for me, but they love it, so we share. And just off the north direction, I have the gravestone of my beautiful kitty, Ruby Redson. 17 years with that catriarch. So she watches over my sacred circle garden for me. And then over here, this is in the northeast quadrant. This is where I have a lot more of my beautiful little wild blue pine that I'm waiting to go crazy in my garden. I have more oregano. Lots of oregano has gone rogue in the garden. And I have spearmint. So I have 3 kinds of mint in this garden. Daisies and echinacea, rogue plants right there, living together in the same space. More daisies and echinacea living together in the same space. And I have one plant, can't find it right now, that is daisy, echinacea, and black-eyed Susan, all cohabitating in the same space. They created their own little wild plant commune. You gotta love wild plants. And then I have some rogue garlic chives that came here that I hope survive. And this one here is an Indian paintbrush, another rogue plant that I'm going to be very careful with, because if you let too many things go to seed, if you're a gardener, you know, they crazy take over. And then right next to my fire pit, I have all kinds of beautiful stones. This was supposed to be my spot to sit, and my feet go right there when I have a fire, but the daisies planned other things for my garden. Lots of stones, lots of heart-shaped stones that were gifts from my older sister, who finds heart-shaped stones everywhere. I have heart-shaped stones in each quadrant, each direction of the center here. And then I have a beautiful little piece of cedar growing lichen on here. It's amazing. Lots of stones, some that came from Colorado, the mountains, gifted to me for this sacred space. And then we'll end with ether, the balance of everything. And if you notice, most of the stones in my Sacred Circle garden are sandstone, Potsdam sandstone, because I live in a Potsdam sandstone house and I frequent the Potsdam sandstone quarry. All these beautiful stones lining my fire pit came from the riverbed and various places I've been to pick things up over the years. Stones out of the High Peaks area. So the candles are all ready for tonight. It's May 25th, and the full moon is technically tomorrow morning, but tonight is full moon celebration here in the Sacred Circle garden. Out will come my drum, and who knows what else. And the candles will be my fire to protect my beautiful friend, the wild daisy plant.